Hi there, I'm Josh Finn from J&H Aerospace. This is the build video for the 2026 Science Olympiad Hurricane Helicopter for Science Olympiad Helicopters Competition. You will notice there's a box. The helicopter lives in a box. So if you are watching this as the build video and you don't have one of these, you should have one. This box meets the specs. It does not have tape wrapped around the top or jagged edges that can throw your box out of spec or destroy your helicopter. Yes, there are these perforations. They interlock with the lid to help you lock the box closed if you wrap a rubber band around it, but they don't do anything else. As you can see, the Hurricane fits inside the box. So get a good quality box, not a garbage one off of Amazon, and store your helicopter correctly. That commercial aside, let's get started. Before beginning construction of your Tornado, you need to make sure that you have all of these tools assembled before you. So you need your instruction manual, or sorry, not this, the kit handout, which includes this page of templates right here. Without these, you cannot accurately assemble the helicopter. These still include the pattern for the vane. We're not going to use that for version 3. You need a pair of sharp scissors. You need a pair of needle nose pliers in good condition, with adequate ability to grasp them, preferably shallow groove jaws that meet completely. You will want a single edge razor blade or equivalent, preferably though a single edge razor blade that's easiest to manipulate, and it should be a new and fresh one before each build. So your kit builds 2 helicopters, that means you need a minimum of 2 razor blades. You have a roll of Scotch tape handy, but it is highly recommended that you have a pair of locking forceps, also known as hemostats. So you can see that they have that locking action. These are used for making your rubber motors. You need to get a pair of these. We do sell them. Have an electric cautery if at all possible. You can cut your covering with a razor blade, but I highly recommend getting one of these cauteries. They're available from indoorffsupply.com. Have a bottle of good quality super glue, cyanoacrylate cement. That means you need either Zap, Gorilla in a bottle this style, or Bob Smith. Nothing else is acceptable. You need to have a good quality glue in a good quality bottle. So the little squeeze type bottles and the metal tubes, just get rid of that and get the good stuff, because that's what you need to assemble this helicopter. In pairing with that, you need to have a bottle of CA Accelerator, also known as Kicker. This helps tremendously with getting the build accurate and on time. Have some Elmer's glue stick. This is the all-purpose, not the school glue. This is used for repairing any covering that peels up in actual use. These helicopters launch at very high torques, and the covering does occasionally peel off. Any damage, sometimes covering peels off, so you need a good quality glue stick to reattach that covering. For attaching the covering initially though, you need 3M Super 77 spray adhesive. This is the material for attaching the covering. I should add, this stuff is very sticky and it goes everywhere. Follow our instructions for how to apply it and how to attach the covering. Do not get creative and come up with your own shortcuts. Do it the right way the first time. This is petroleum jelly, also known as Vaseline. We sell this along with all of these other items, save for the cautery. This is readily available at Walmart or any other big box store though, and this is used for attaching your covering to the covering frame before actually covering the rotor blades. The Hurricane is our advanced kit for this year, so it uses rotor tips and helical twisted blades to give you flight times of over 2.5 minutes in a typical living room. That's pretty good performance for a very simple helicopter in terms of the overall structure, but it does require you to carefully assemble the helical twisted blades. So we're going to get started with that. The first thing you want to do to build a Hurricane is to take out your jig sheets. And so we're going to start out on the bottom rotor here. You can start out with either one. Use a new, fresh razor blade, as we mentioned. Keep your accelerator and CA glue handy. And so we're going to go ahead and pop out the main plate of a bottom rotor jig. Now, these can be a little detailed and finicky to get out, so take your time with it. And so there we are. Now clean up any of these corners because they can cause you issues with the fitment of some of these parts. These stations, these are your pitch stations along this component, they are specifically keyed for the part that goes at that location. And so you want to clean those slots out so that they key in correctly. Like I said, this one, this is one from our reject pile, so it's a little extra spicy. We try to filter these out in the kits, but keep an eye out for these issues because occasionally one slips through, and if it's really bad, you can just contact us and we'll replace it. The next parts that you want to get out are these pitch stations. So those are G1 through 5. Sometimes they'll just pop right out. So that's G4. Now G2, we want to cut this part out so it's not as big of a deal. And G5 is a little bitty one, and then G3 on this sheet came out a little off. Now it's very important as you're cutting these parts out, don't compromise the rest of this sheet because you're going to use this. There's spare ribs and whatnot on here that you're going to use either as spares or to build your second helicopter, because this kit does, after all, build 2 helicopters. Now, sometimes, like I said, this is a sheet off the reject pile, so gotta be a little careful with this one, and I'm actually breaking up the sheet a little bit. So if you have one that, for whatever reason, hasn't cut all the way through, so those are all of your parts for those stations, and then we'll come back to the remaining parts after we have these secured, because you don't want to go cutting a whole bunch of parts out and then have a whole bunch of parts lying around. So these little stations, I'm going to go ahead and fit them in here. This one's a little on the tight side. So I'm going to put these in here with no glue, just so that you can see how that they go in place. So it is very important. We're doing this lettering side up, and each of these has these little keys in it which line it up so that it goes together correctly. So you can't put it in backwards. I can't take G3 and put it into the slots for G4, etc. So pay careful attention to that line up in that arrangement. That's very important to get this part as you need it to be to get a proper setup for your helicopter. So now we'll go back. We're going to use good quality super glue. Hopefully his Now it is very important that you do make sure that these parts go all the way down flush. If they don't, you're going to have a problem. This is 1/2 of a pitch block. Sorry, I didn't get the glue all the way hardened there. There we go. Now it's important that these pieces be straight up and down. And this is 1/2. We're going to put the facing on here in a minute. Now the part that's really, that you have to pay close attention to is this part keys in, because it's an alignment guide for your center post on your rotor. And the issue that you have to bear in mind about this is that if you get excess glue in here gluing this in now, it makes it harder to attach the other side. But if you get excess glue in gluing the other side on here, this doesn't fit in well. I recommend fitting it in now by simply putting glue only, I've got excess glue on the bottle here, only in the little slot that it fits into. As an editorial note here, I glued the center mast in backwards because I wasn't paying attention, and so that's one of your cues to pay attention to that aspect of this kit. So we're going to show you putting it in the correct orientation so that this vertical face right here lines up with that score line in the middle. That is the correct orientation for that component. You only need one, you don't need a second one. Next, we will pop this guy out and this one over here. So this piece has a couple of slots to line it up so that it will glue on like so. It doesn't key into the outside, it does key here and here. So at G3 and G4 it keys in. You want it level across the bottom here, so flush with the bottom of this part. Just like that. I put glue along all of the boundaries of that. And then this component I recommend putting on with the label side out. And I'll tell you why. Because it has a longer cut on this side which is useful for clearing the little gusset joiner for your carbon rods. To assemble the rest of your bottom rotor jig, this one cut really nice. You can break out this other plate, and it is going to key in just like this. So I'll show it up close with all the labeling on the same side facing up. This goes in here. So all of the contact area, we'll put glue on it. And I recommend putting down parchment paper and gluing this thing so it's flat. I got glue on my table. And this is one of the few times that you will see me do this. So there you are. Now, just repeat all of the steps that you've done over here on this side, so the facing goes around to build out the rest of this jig. This is a completed bottom rotor jig. You build the top jig in exactly the same manner. We're just going to show, we're not going to show the construction of it here on camera because it's exactly the same. The only difference between the top and the bottom rotor jigs is that they are mirror imaged. However, and this is key, as long as you go through and do this lettering side up, lining up G1 through 5, as we showed you before, you will not have any problems. So you won't end up with mirror imaged parts. So when you're done, you have a completed top and bottom rotor set. These are purely the jigs that you build the helicopter off of. You should be able to sight down these lines and come out relatively straight at the end if you've done it right. The next step is to get out your carbon fiber that is supplied with this kit. And it is usually taped in place. And we're going to pull out a few of these. Now sometimes the carbon comes out a little short, but there should be enough long pieces in the kit to give you 4 of these bottom bits. Now if you have a piece that comes out a little on the short side, let me see here, like this one, you'll notice it's not quite long enough. Save that one for building the top. you can take bits of tape. Masking tape is preferred, but you can use Scotch tape like I'm doing here. And all that you're looking to do is to tape these rods so they run along that line. There's two lines actually, and what you're doing is you're using those to line it up front and back. Now, you'll have a little excess on the end here, so line up your scissors with the end and snip that off. Remember we said this piece was a little on the shorter side, so we're going to line it up top. Helps to have the tape first. I'm going to tape this guy in place. Now we want to make sure this end right here lines up with the center line of that rib station. Once it's lined up there, you can come over to the other side with your scissors and basically center them up over that station. And with a little bit of encouraging, this will start to break loose. You can also use wire cutters to make much faster work of that. But I'm showing it with scissors because some of you come to me with, well, what do I do if I don't have wire cutters? That's what you do. Now, we're going to start building on the ends of this component. So what you're going to do is put a little dab of glue on the cut end where you just cut it. Going to drive that carbon rod kind of into that. Not applying a bunch of pressure, just enough to get it to stay there. And try not to whack it back out like I did. Break off a piece of tape and secure it so it's still there. One more piece of tape. Now you're going to find that you're going to snip this piece off flush with the end of the jig, and this piece isn't really big enough to use for the rest of that, so you can set it aside. We'll find another short piece. Do we have any more short pieces? Maybe we don't. Nope, we just had a couple. And so we'll lay this rod in place. Oh, forgot what I said to do, which is gotta glue it. And same story as before, just like that. Now, this is how you get all the carbon in for one blade. Let the glue harden on this while you do the same thing over on this one, exactly the same arrangement. At this point, you have both of these rotor assemblies built up in terms of the carbon framing. The next step, since that is completed, is to start actually building up the balsa structure of these. So We do supply spares here, and so if I get into one here that I don't quite like, I can grab another out. I'm going to grab 2 of these. You need one for each helicopter. And that's because there's a particular step I want to show here. So for this top rotor, we simply squirt some glue in. We can fit this guy in place. And it is important to have that lined up perpendicular. And if you've set this mast guide here correctly, you have a guide to get that piece in exactly right. And then, for lack of multiple hands here and time, I'm just going to spray it. Again, don't usually recommend doing that, but I'm doing it. For the bottom rotor, you do the exact same thing, but there's a little more to it. Now, sometimes a little bit of this mast gets in the way, so I'm going to trim away just a smidge of it. So you can see I cut a little diagonal off of it. And now we will stick this guy in here completely unobstructed. And I think it was fine as it was, but that just made me feel like it was going to go easier. So again, lined up nice and straight. Once that's hardened, for the top rotor, the center is done. For the bottom rotor though, you want to install these little pieces. These are effectively they're gluing surface and alignment for your prop shaft. So you can see how I have speared this very carefully with a fresh razor blade, so that now I can go in here and I can put glue only on those flats that are shown here at the top, not in that hole. You don't want to get any glue in the hole. It's actually a slot at this point, but it is going to form a little hole. Massage that in place. Just like that. We'll get the other one here. Same procedure. Exact same procedure. Just like that. That again is only for the bottom rotor. You don't need that for the top rotor. All right, so the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to start working our way down this sheet. So we have taken out the straight ribs. Now we're going to go to these. These are the G2, G3, G4, G5 stations. So we're going to put glue in the ends of these ribs, and then at the G2 station, we simply lodge this in. Now this one I'm having to slide off just a little bit Sometimes these, the alignment of your carbon rods gets where it's a little quirky, so you can see this one's not completely centered on that, and that's okay. Do the same thing on the other side. There you are. So the first two ribs are in place. Now we go to the next rib station. So these are the longest ribs. Now there's a catch to this. You can install these now, which will make the little gusset hard to get to, or you can install the gusset, and you better have the gusset in right so the ribs will clear it. I'm going to show you how to put the gusset in first. So pop out one of these gussets, and again we spear this guy just like so. Now what I recommend doing is that you flip this over, put glue on the carbon rod there, and then you can bring your razor blade in from underneath with this part and slide it in place, and it'll come right off your razor blade once you apply that downward pressure. I will show you the same step once again on the other side, just so you can get another view of it. So again, we spear this with the end of our razor blade. We put our glue on the carbon rod. We come in from behind, like so, and slip it off. Now you can see how that's on there. Now, I'm trying to put glue on the carbon. That's not the way to do this. Now on these, all you have to do is rest the front of that rib on that gusset. Just like that. Keep showing this the other way, which is you can do it that way, where that you put glue on the carbon first. I don't actually recommend that. It's a bad habit I've gotten into. If you can't tell, I have built a lot of these. Alright, so we just have one rib set left. These, as you can see, line up flush with the ends. and on the other side. So that's completed. All right, now we have both rotors built up on here, so all the ribs are in place. So at that point, you can go in here, you can start peeling the tape off. And you just want to be careful when you take the tape off that you don't break the helicopter itself. So if you notice, I kind of pull it off diagonally. I'm not pulling straight, I'm pulling kind of diagonally, and that way it peels gradually instead of all at once. If you've done everything just right, you pop the last piece of tape off and this thing just slides right out. Now, if it doesn't, go carefully prod along and find where it's still stuck to the jig, and then carefully cut it loose with a razor blade. You don't want to just tear this thing loose. Alright, so we're on the top rotor. Let's see if it comes loose. It is sticking. So we're going to feel for where it's sticking. It appears that we're sticking somewhere along here. And it must be this rib itself has a little bit of glue on it. Yep, there it is. You can feel the resistance right there. So I'm just going to carefully pry until it comes loose. Let's make sure nowhere else is stuck, because that's really putting up some resistance. And it appears we're stuck here too. Alright, so now we're free everywhere except where I got a bit of glue on the jig itself. There we go. So now, I'll let that one out too. There's more than one way to build the covering frame and cover this model, but I recommend kind of lining these pieces up, and instead of a regular frame, lay these in pieces on top. And that way you can have free ends to your covering. Just like that. Okay, maybe with some CA accelerator. There we go. So we're only going to put Vaseline on these reels here. Before you put the Vaseline onto this frame, let's go ahead and set up some covering for it. So we're going to snip the end off of this bag, because by doing that, we're able to open it up into a tube. Just like that. And now we can snip straight down the edge here. And there we are. We want a piece of covering that is roughly the length of this. So what we're going to do is we're going to cut it with a razor blade like that. You set the rest of your covering aside. Take this piece, wad it up. Spread it out. And I'll wad it up again. So take your Vaseline and smear it on these rails like so. Make sure to not get Vaseline on your covering over here, because the glue won't stick to it and you'll have various other issues too. So now we can just set this down on here, lift it off, and you can tighten it up a little bit. I don't have to tighten it up too much, believe it or not, but whatever makes you feel best about it. And there you are, covering on the frame. Alright, we're going to show you how to spray the adhesive on one of these rotor blades. So, you do not want to hold the adhesive right up here against it. You're going to do this from a distance. That way it doesn't glob up in one area. Now we need adhesive on the curved, outward curved part of the blade along its entire length. We don't care about the bottom. Glue down there just is going to stick to things and make a mess. So we're spraying from the top, and we're concerned from this inner curved rib out to the tip. That center post, can't put anything on there because the covering in there just creates drag. So we're going to, from about this distance, that's actually a little close, a little further out here. And you do want pretty good coverage. Now notice I'm just doing sprays like this. You don't go like that. That makes a mess. Just quick little bursts. And now you notice, you can see how it's turned kind of white there, where I've sprayed it. Now, grab it really right here in the middle. You're gonna get some glue on you. Be careful, because you'll stick to everything, including this, and you'll break it. So be careful where you point it. And just get from that inner rib out to the tip. Now you can see that's got that same milky white appearance, as opposed to kind of darker. Notice in the center it's still black. It's got that milky white appearance out here. That means it's sprayed well. To cover this model, you do need to be kind of careful because you're covering a three-dimensional curved surface. So what we're going to do is we are going to make sure the covering is on here as tight as we wanted it. And you can lay this first rib on the edge. You see how I've kind of snagged it there? And then lay the back side of the blade, the straight part, down, just like that. Now if you're careful, you can start gradually teasing the rest of it down. And watch for wrinkles, so you may have to pull on the covering a little bit as you do this, just like that, and all the way out. And then you just smooth the covering down on it. You can cover 2 blades at a time if you're really, really on it. So notice I snagged it with that first rib, then I laid down the trailing edge of the blade, just like that. So I've snagged that on, and then I lay down the rest, and then I do kind of have to push, so the covering does tend to bubble up a little bit here. This one's not coming out quite as pretty. Oh, there we go. This takes practice, and you may have to build more than one helicopter. You may have to build, 3 or 4 of them before you get the hang of it. This is not an easy process. The way you win at helicopters is you keep building them until you get them right. Now, I don't recommend cutting right up against the edge. I recommend leaving a little bit of a gap, kind of like that, because we've sprayed enough adhesive on here that we can wrap it back. Now notice I'm not going all the way to the edge. I am going in a little bit, leaving that part uncut. That way it holds this whole blade taut. And then I can cut, leaving a gap again, so I don't cut the whole thing. I can come in here, and since I haven't cut the other blade loose, this covering is still held taut, so this blade over here is immobilized. And then zip across. Got these tabs all here. And all my blades are loose, just like that. Now remember, I'm laying them down covering side up because the other sides are still sticky. And then I can come in here, I can wrap this excess covering under. And now I have the covering really secured, so I can launch it crazy high torques and the covering won't peel off. Because yes, that is a very real possibility. Now you do want the covering out here on the tip to be cut flush, because CA will not stick to this covering, and you want to be able to glue those winglets on later. Because these fly quite a bit better with the winglets. There we go. And then just repeat for the other side. The next step, once you have finished with the rotor blade covering, is to put winglets on the rotors. Now these winglets are not so much for stability as they are for a little bit of added performance. We find that if they are installed correctly, you gain about 10 seconds on your flight times typically. Now that does require that your rubber motors are optimized. So the way that we install these is, this is the leading edge of the blade, and so we want these, hang on a second, we want these to be swept back, so the flat part in the back, the curved part in the front. And we're going to glue them on at a fairly abrupt dihedral angle. So you install them kind of like that, at about that angle. The angle is not critical. You can in fact have them straight up and down. You can have them at 45 degrees, just somewhere in that range. Notice I dipped the accelerator in this case. It's very important because I do not want the accelerator to wick under this covering and loosen the covering. I have some kind of snaggy stuff on the covering here. And again, just like that. Bottom rotor is the same configuration, just remember it is a mirror image. Now it's important to remember that the piece of 020 wire is going to be taped to your motor stick sheet. So we're going to pop one of these motor sticks out, and we are going to leave that piece of wire attached because we don't want to lose it. This is a motor stick, obviously, fuselage. This is the top, this is the bottom, and we want to make a nose bearing to glue onto that. I'm going to lay down a scrap piece of plywood onto the table here to use as something to rub against so I don't cut into my table surface. And I want this nose bearing to be slightly longer than that flat right there. Just give me a little bit of working space. I'm going to take a blade that I don't really care about. If you've got a spare razor blade, then you can use that one, but it's not going to be any good after you use it to do this. We roll this tubing under the blade nice and straight like this, and that leaves this score line right here. You can see it breaks right off. Now we're going to put down a little bit of glue on that flat. Now it is important, do not get glue in this tubing. So we're just going to lay it down on here. We do want it to be straight. That's very important that it be straight. The other thing is you want to make sure that some of the bearing, just a small amount, is sticking out this way. Just a little bit. You don't want it to be so long that your helicopter goes over length, but you do want enough that the rotor does not rub against here. Now this step is very important because I've seen a lot of people not doing this, and it causes problems. You want to put a dab of glue here, and you want to wrap that thread binding around here. And then we're going to put some glue around here. We'll go ahead and snip off the excess, and then we're going to fill this all with glue. Again, don't get any glue in the tubing. Now that is secured. You're going to take your piece of piano wire next, and you're going to make a rear hook with it. So what we're going to do is, instead of bending it yet, we're going to go ahead and we're going to jab it into the fuselage here like this. You can actually push it in like that. Now when you do that, you want to make sure you're resting it here against this gusset so that you can shove it in. And remember, top is down here. Our bearing is here. So now we pull it back out. We'll squirt a little bit of glue down into the hole, and then quickly we're going to insert the wire back in, and there we have it. Now this part also is under quite a bit of stress, so we want to make sure that it is wrapped enough to keep it from pulling out. And then when I get to the top like that, I'm going to wrap the thread back around, and we'll do that a couple of times so that it's locked in up at the top. Now I'm not just lathering this thing with glue. I'm just getting enough in there that it soaks in and hardens the thread to the surface. So we don't want to add a whole lot of excess weight. So if you look at this, once I'm done, you can't really see a lot of glue residue on there as I'm wiping it off. Now the next thing that we want to do is we're going to grab this wire right here. Now this requires a fair amount of strength. So I don't know if you can see, my knuckles are white. So if you're a kid doing this, you know, when you squeeze somebody, when you're trying, like if you're trying to see who can squeeze each other's hand the hardest, the guy that squeezes your hand so hard he thinks that you think that he's gonna break your hand, that's how hard you should be squeezing this. It should hurt a little bit. So we're going to bend this piece of wire around like that, and see we've got a sharp bend right there. Now, put the pliers back exactly where they were before, and we're going to push this back. And again, that's a harsh bend. Like that, you can see that dug into my finger. It still leaves an impression in it. Now we leave ourselves about a quarter of an inch, maybe 3/8 of an inch excess there. We snip that and break it, just like that. The next step here is to make a rotor shaft, or a propeller shaft, however you want to call it. I'm going to show you how I make my shaft so it's easy to load and unload. This again requires you to squeeze this like you are trying to break these pliers. So I want about this much wire, that's about 1/8 of an inch, and I am going to jam this into my thumb. You see how my thumb is white knuckling? Like, that hurts. That genuinely hurts, okay? That's how I get a sharp bend, just like that. You see that sharp bend? Now I'm gonna make the same, go about the same distance there. I'm going to do it again till it hurts. Ouch. Should hurt. Now, you see I've made a Z bend here. Now, this time, I'm going to bend the same direction. So now, and again, it hurts when I bend that. If it hurts, it means you're doing it right. So I've got that shape now. See that? And we're going to do it again. Same deal. See that shape right there? So both those ends are pointing the same direction. Now I'm going to grab this diamond that I've made, that diamond shape. Grab it right there. I'm going to bend it back. Not all the way though. Not going to bend it back all the way. All those have been 90-degree bends up till now. Now I make a 45, and now you can see I have a hook. Now you want to adjust this, bending it back and forth until this diamond, this apex of this diamond, if you spin this shaft in your hand, stays in the same place. So I'll give you for example. If it wobbles like that, you see how it's not straight? I want to carefully tease that back until it runs true. This makes a big difference if you do that. Take the time to get a balanced hook, get a really nice result. All right, now that we've made our rotor shaft, we can slide it into this bearing that we attached a minute ago. We're going to slide it all the way up here. Our finished rotor assembly, we want it to have about that much clearance. You don't want it to be jammed up against here. You don't want it to be real long either, so you're wasting motor stick length. You want it to be right about there, just enough to be reliable. This little sheet of Teflon washers is a little bit of a pain to work with if you're not used to it. You're going to take this wire and you're going to push it through one of those little pinholes. Like that. And now, if I pull hard enough, it breaks off and I've got a washer. I want a minimum of 3 of these washers. I'm going to go for 4. You've got plenty of extras in this kit. That's 4. Now we're going to slide all of these down, just like that. Next, we want to find that bottom rotor. Now, this hole down here probably has some glue in it, so it probably doesn't slide in as easily as it did for me. But mine slid on. You see that? Look at that. That's pretty fantastic. It's also satisfying. Now I'm going to slide this all the way down. Now, remember we said we wanted about that much slack. So what I'm going to do is now I'm going to take this shaft. I'm going to pull it out. And I'm actually going to step over here to the other side where I grabbed that, so that I'm not bending this against the rotor. I want to bend it against my fingers like this, so I don't risk bending any of the main shaft. Okay, just like that. Now, at this point, there's something very careful, very important you want to do. Rotate this around so that it is straddled across this crossbar, not across the piece of wood, but across the carbon spar. And grab it again, like that, and we're going to bend it over. Now, at this point, you've got to be able to cut this, right? You cannot use your pliers to cut it. So you need a pair of wire cutters to go in here and snip off that excess. And you want about that much excess, just like that. Do not throw the rest of your wire away. You'll need it for your other helicopter. But now, that'll sink down on there, across there. Now, at this point, on the other side, run glue along the center rib and on here on that shaft, and grab by the leading edge and push this back until this hook comes back against it. Put a little bit of extra glue right there, just because we want to secure that thoroughly. Now at this point, go on here. We can make sure that's all secured. Just like that. The next step is to secure your top rotor. There are two little marks, laser engraved marks there, and those are where the spars go. So we're going to just put some glue at the top and bottom. You can run it along there too. It doesn't really matter, because that's not very load bearing. That really is just an alignment guide for you to know where to put that thing so that the rotor is not skewed this way or this way. Now, it is important to make sure these spars are pretty well secured, because they're under some pretty substantial load. You can break them off if they're not glued on well. Okay, so structurally, this helicopter is actually complete now, but to satisfy Science Olympiad rules, we've got to do a couple more things. Cut out this top disc that goes on the top of the helicopter. And make sure that you punch out the little square in the middle. And then we shove motor stick through, make sure it's on straight. Now, along the grain direction of the wood, this is very strong, but across this direction, it's not. So we want to put some gussets in to ensure that that disc does not break when you slam it into the ceiling from a launch at over 1 inch ounce. So across this grain here, just like this. Sorry guys, you're being serenaded by a parrot. So we put that one there. Remember, it's going across this grain, not this direction. It's not useful this way. See? We'll do the same thing on the other side. Just like that. All right, that's the end of the construction. Now we just have to weigh it and make a rubber motor for it. All right, so you need something tall enough on your scale that you can rest the helicopter up here and the blades not touch the ground, or the table, I should say. And this one is 3.6 grams. This is fairly typical for one of these. They do tend to come out underweight. If you do a good job, you're going to be underweight. So we're going to take some of our ballast clay and just drop it on here. So that's 4.3 grams. That's a little too much. So we're going to cut some off. See where that puts us. Puts us at 4.13, almost 4.14. That's still too much. .062, we're almost there. Remember, you're going to add a little bit of glue, and so that's going to contribute there. 4.04. 4.004. There we go. Now, your ballast goes up here under the top disc. You don't want to put ballast further down because it will make the helicopter less stable. And I also recommend putting it over on the rotor side of the motor stick rather than on the opposite side. So now with that dab of glue, we're actually going to need to take a little bit of clay off. No, we only added, so 4.005. You don't want to be too far under. If the judges, if the event proctors let you adjust weight when you check in, you can actually get it precise down to 4.00. Otherwise, 5 milligrams is not going to really have a big effect on your flight times. So that is a finished Hurricane 2026. For this aircraft, I like to start out with a 10-inch loop of 1/8. So the way that we do that is we measure out 10 inches, and then we'll measure out 10 inches again. We'll cut that to size. Now once you have this strand of rubber, you're going to want to put 2 O-rings on it. These little guys. These won't fit on necessarily very well, so what I like to do is snip kind of a angle here on the one. And that allows me to thread these through. This does mean you may want to cut your rubber about 1/4 inch over length, because what you're going to want to do to facilitate tying is you do need to then go back and snip that flush. As you can see, I've taken that much rubber off to get that result. This is silicone oil that we sell. You can also get shock oil, silicone shock oil for RC cars, or Armor All, or something of that nature. I'm going to squirt a little bit of this material on the end here, as well as on this other end. Now, I'm going to grasp this with my forceps. You see how little I have sticking out, because I don't want to leave any excess. I'm going to tie a granny knot here, just like that. See? I'm going to pull that up tight. Now I'm going to tie a second one. Then put a tiny, tiny dab of glue on there. See how little's left? Our final step is we want to squirt some more lubricant on here and rub it in really well to the rubber. The rubber should be slimy. You want it to be thoroughly lubricated with the silicone so it slides over itself without chafing. And every time you go to wind the rubber up, you should check. And if it's not very slimy, you should put more lubricant on it, because the lubricant does get washed off. Alright, so we have our rubber motor freshly lubricated. This is about a 12-inch loop of rubber. We're going to position the knot kind of towards this upper end. This is in the absence of a torque meter, for a quick test flight, you can do binder clip with a paper clip. So you can see I'm clipping it on here, and I can slide this O-ring over the paper clip, and there we have it. Now this motor has not been wound up before. If you're making a test flight, that's fine, but if you're trying to collect data, you need to wind this up, unwind it, lubricate it again, and then fly on it. Got a full row of knots, most of the second row of knots, working my way in. Notice I'm keeping this winder shaft pointed like this. If you do it off like this, sounds terrible. Just keep it pointed straight. All good. See? Just like that. Rubber feels pretty hard here, so that means I'm up about a little over 1 inch ounce. Now, notice I have control over this O-ring. I'm holding this helicopter by the nose bearing, not by the rotor, by the nose bearing, keeping the prop shaft under control. And so I can just slide that O-ring onto the shaft. Now I grab this other O-ring on the end. Let's see how I have complete control over it. I am squeezing this hard. I'm not being wimpy about it. I'm holding on hard. So I can just slide that right onto that hook. That's how you wind and load a rubber motor for a quick test flight. Alright, you will notice I've not changed my grip on this at all since I've loaded it. I've kept it like that. Now I'm not going to throw this, I'm not going to do anything creative, I'm just going to let go. I'm going to open my fingers as quickly as possible so they don't tangle in the rotor. Just like that. It may not have shown up on the camera, but I actually yanked my hand downward as I was letting go of it. Helicopter's running pretty smooth. You can see a little bit of vibration up here. This is because things are kind of offset from dead center. Down here we're wobbling a little bit, not too badly. I think most of that is from motor stick vibration. But you could put this on a pitch gauge. You want to make sure that that prop shaft never gets bent by mishandling it. So you want it to be nice and straight, and you can evaluate some of that based on this behavior here. So we do sell a pitch gauge. It is possible, if you're careful, to fit these blades into it and thereby to validate what the helicopter's condition is. Now we're getting a little bit of gyroscopic precession there. You can see it's kind of doing the dead man walking thing. And now we're back to kind of stabilized. These do deal with gyroscopic precession issues. And if you have a ceiling fan, ceiling fans are just the kiss of death. And we'll quickly throw it back up in the air because it still has enough power to go up. Look at that. You can play with the positioning of the weight sometimes to get this part of the flight to stabilize a little better. It's not really that big of a deal. And we're going back for the stupid ceiling fan again. Look at that. So if I wound this up a little more, do 2 minutes, 2.5, something like that. Look at that. And down. I just want to show you, you can see there's a lot of knots left in the rubber motor. So this rubber motor is actually a little bit long for this model. So you would want to shorten that by about 1 inch and do, 1/2 inch or 1 inch increments, something like that, as you shorten the rubber motor until you get it to just land basically looking kind of a little more like that instead of just a whole bunch of knots up like that. All right, guys, that's the completion of the build for the Hurricane 2026. Hope you've enjoyed it. Hope you've learned something. Questions, comments, put them down in the comment section below. There's a link to this kit if you haven't found the link already. And we'll see you at a contest. Hi, I'm Josh Finn. This is Hope. We are J&H Aerospace.
If you like this video, hit the like button.
Also, how about subscribe to our channel and check out jhaerospace.com for new free flight products and all of the tooling that you'll need to build them.
Thanks for watching.